Hey there, YouTube, and welcome back to Ask a Maestro. YouTube, I'm very happy to be back with you after my rather lengthy summer hiatus. But the reason that I was gone for so long is that I was moving to glamorous Portland, Oregon. You can even tell that I am wearing casual hipsterish clothing in order to blend in better with the natives. I am super pumped to be back for what I'm calling Season 2 of Ask a Maestro. And what I'm really happy about is that I have an excellent question from somebody whom I do not know personally. This question comes to us from YouTube user Luke Chawrun, who asks, "This may sound like heresy, but since we now have ways to amplify instruments, why do orchestras still have such a large string section? Can't they just have one player per string part amplifying them?" Oh, Luke, I love this question. First of all, let's back up and figure out why are there so many string players in an orchestra in the first place. String players outnumber wind, brass, and percussion players usually by 2 to 1. Whereas there may only be 3 flutes or trumpets or trombones, there are usually something in the order of 30, 40 violins. In fact, if we think about a 100-piece symphony orchestra, 60 to 70 of those players are probably going to be strings, and the other 30 to 40 would be winds, brass, and percussion combined. The main issue is one of balance. We want to be able to hear the strings playing, and strings are much softer instruments than winds and brass and percussion. So in fact, you might need 4 violins to sound as loud as, say, 1 oboe. Back in the Baroque era, that's music from the years 1600 to about 1750, the string sections were much smaller, and there weren't that many wind players playing in an orchestra. You might have just 1 flute, or maybe a pair of horns in the back, occasionally a timpani. So let's look at some music by Johann Sebastian Bach, played by an ensemble that specializes in music from this era. As the decades and centuries wore on, composers became more ambitious and they started including more and more wind players in their orchestras. So now if we take a look at some music by, say, Gustav Mahler, you'll see that the string section has become what it is today, a body of 60 to 70 musicians. But now let's get to Andrew's actual question, which is, now in the 21st century, we have the ability to amplify instruments, so why not just have one player play the part that was played by, say, 20 violinists before? Well, Andrew, it's interesting that you mention heresy in your question, because I don't know if you've met people who are interested in orchestral music, but they tend to like tradition. The other thing that they tend to like is the 3D sound quality of listening to an acoustic ensemble. And I'm totally with them on this. I'm with them on the tradition thing too. This 3D quality of sound is really the reason that people go to hear live orchestral music. There's a depth and a richness to the sound that simply can't be recreated by the flat audio image of a speaker. But that actually brings me to one of my very favorite subjects, which is Broadway orchestration. Broadway is an area where there are traditionally string instruments in the orchestrations, but there's not this expectation for a 3D acoustic sound product. When you go to a Broadway musical, you know that the whole orchestra is going to be mic'd, you know that the singers are going to be mic'd, and that the sound mix, the balance between the two, is going to be controlled by an engineer, and it's all going to be coming through speakers in the house. Now combine that with the fact that Broadway producers are always trying to cut costs, and usually there might just be one string player, usually a violinist, maybe a cellist, and they play the string part. And you can hear their sound quality pretty clearly because it's being mic'd and mixed artificially. Another place that large string sections are sort of fudged is, of course, in film music. And that has to do with other improvements in technology, namely samples that are played on keyboards. So these days, very often, if you have a large string sound, that big kind of pad that you're looking for, that will most often be played on a program synthesizer. But what's interesting is that whenever a composer needs the sound of a solo string, they always get an external player to play it on the recording. That's because while the synthesizers can sort of fudge the sound of a large string ensemble, the sound of a single violin is so distinctive that you really can't fake it. You can't just play it on a keyboard and expect it to sound legit. Let's listen to a little bit of one of my very favorite scores from recent memory. It's by the Spanish composer Alberto Iglesias, and it was written for the movie La piel que habito by Pedro Almodóvar. Well, YouTube, thank you so much for being back with me today. Thank you, Luke, for your excellent question. I've gotten amazing questions in the comments, and I'm really looking forward to answering them, but keep them coming. Put them right down there in the comments. Feel free to like and subscribe, and until the next time I see you, play an instrument, sing a song, and goodbye, everyone.